In a statement, Eskom Board chairperson Professor Malegapuru Makgoba says Mabuza was an exemplary leader and an advocate for clean governance. Mabuza was first appointed to serve on the Eskom Board of Directors by President Cyril Ramaphosa on January 20th, 2018, and was also acting CEO of the power utility. He resigned from the organization in January last year. Mabuza had a long career in business, starting as a taxi owner in the 1980s. He also served as Group CEO of Tsogosan and chair of the Telkom Board, amongst others. Mabuza is survived by his wife, Siviwe, and 3 children. He also happened to be the former chairperson of Business Leadership South Africa. We're now joined by Busi Mavuso, who's the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa. Busi, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I can imagine that you're feeling an immense sense of pain. Perhaps you can let us in on the interaction that you've had with the late Jabu Mabuza.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for the invitation. So I think all I can say is what a loss, not just to BLSA, but to the broader business community. I can confirm without hesitation that the business fraternity is much poorer today, with Jabu having passed on. So Jabu led BLSA during a very critical time when we took a decision as big business to actually take a very firm stance towards the state capture project. When you're describing someone like Jabu, you're describing someone who was bold, someone who was courageous, someone who was a formidable leader, someone with very well-respected business acumen, someone who displayed traits of an independent leader. So it is a great loss to the business community. And I think during his time and during his tenure, we really took a firm decision as the big business community to actually ensure that we are actually going to advocate for ethical leadership. We took a decision that we are actually going to work very collaboratively with government to ensure that this ANC-led government is a capable state. We took a very firm decision, that state capture is going to be denounced by big business. And you would remember that it was under the leadership of Jabu Mabuza that big business and BLSA, called for the setting up of the State Capture Commission. So that was a leader that Jabu was. Jabu was very clear that in leadership, what is required is to be a servant. That is why he, without hesitation, took up the project of being the chairperson of Eskom, after he knew very well that he's going into a very tough environment. He's going into an environment that has actually been littered by the state capture project. He went into Eskom immediately after the state capture project, and he knew that he had the big obligation of picking up the pieces and building this formidable organization. And he knew that in doing so, he carried a lot of hopes and dreams of many South Africans, in terms of working towards the restoration of this giant, utility. So it is really with great sadness that we learned of the passing of Jabu Mabuza. And I think we'd really like to wish, his family a strength during this difficult time.
Mm. Many of us as journalists who've interacted with the late Jabu Mabuza remember him wearing his fedora hat and with his neatly trimmed grey beard. From your memory, what's your fondest memory of him?
I think my fondest memory of him is really how he was a consultative person. I have often observed how a lot of people in authority tend to exaggerate their ability to control, and often forget to be consultative in the process. But that was not Jabu. That was not how I experienced him, both as an Eskom board member and actually both as an executive in BLSA. He made sure that whatever decision that we took as an organization, he would pick up the phone to each and every single one of us, and make sure that we actually buy into the decision, we actually buy into the process. And even if you didn't, he will really try his best to win you over, and ensure that even if you are not in agreement, but you actually own the decision that the organization is actually going to take. So I think really that's my fondest memory of him, but also was a very jovial person. He was a very fun person. Jabu didn't like confrontation. He didn't like tension. We really remember him for his jokes. Even before he would start a board meeting, he would share his very funny stories and his very funny jokes, to make sure, that the environment and the tension in the room, is not there. So he was a fun-loving person, someone who really loved peace, someone who wanted to see South Africa progress and who really gave his time, energy, and effort, towards advancing the South African agenda. And the very interesting thing about him is that Jabu didn't need this, right? We knew that in his own personal capacity, he was made. Jabu was a prominent and well-achieved, business leader. But he still took on Eskom, he still took on a PLSA, not because he needed it, but he knew that it was important to South Africa Inc. It was important to Queen and Country, and he really raised his hand and said, Tumamina. So I think that's why I'm saying that we really are poor as a business community and definitely as a country, without a Jabu in our midst.
Busi, thank you so much for your time in sharing those memories with us. That is Busi Mavuso, who is the CEO of Business Leadership South Africa.